The hold of the smuggling vessel reeked of fuel and sweat as Ravi Kapoor frantically rerouted power to the failing engine. Warning lights bathed the cramped space in crimson, matching the flashing alerts on his wrist computer. His latest cargo, rare Centaurian artifacts, rattled in their containment units as the ship shuddered violently. "Come on, you piece of junk," Ravi muttered, fingers dancing across the control panel. The small freighter had seen better days, but it had always pulled through. Not today, apparently. The sensor alert blared again, and Ravi's heart sank. The pirate vessel was gaining, sleek, predatory, and unmistakable with its distinctive scythe-like wings. Everyone in the outer rim knew that ship, the Crimson Talon, flagship of the notorious pirate Queen Valora. Ravi had spent years navigating the dangerous territories between imperial space and the lawless frontier, building a reputation as a smuggler who could deliver anything, anywhere. He'd outrun imperial patrols, negotiated with crime syndicates, and slipped through blockades. But even he knew better than to cross paths with Valora's fleet. "Attention, human vessel," a voice crackled over the comm, "power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." The voice was smooth, confident, with an otherworldly resonance that set it apart from human speech. Ravi considered his options. His weapon systems were minimal, designed for deterrence rather than combat, and his engines were failing. Running was impossible, fighting was suicide. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened the comm channel. "This is Independent Freighter Stardust. My engines are damaged. I'm carrying medical supplies for the colony on Boros." The lie came easily, it always did. A low, amused laugh answered him. "We both know that's not true, smuggler. Your reputation precedes you, Ravi Kapoor." They knew his name. That wasn't good. Before he could respond, a violent jolt rocked the ship. The Crimson Talon had locked on with a tractor beam, pulling his vessel toward its docking bay. Ravi cursed, gathering what he could, his emergency kit, identification chips, and a small blade hidden in his boot. The docking procedure was swift and efficient. When the airlock hissed open, Ravi found himself facing a line of armed guards. They weren't human, their blue-tinged skin and elongated limbs marked them as saurians, a species known for their combat prowess and unwavering loyalty. "Move," one ordered, prodding him forward with an energy pike. They escorted him through the Crimson Talon's corridors. The ship's interior was surprising, not the rusted, chaotic mess typical of pirate vessels, but an elegant blend of advanced technology and alien aesthetics. The walls gleamed with a material that seemed to shift colors with the light, and the air carried a faint scent like cinnamon and ozone. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a command center. Crew members of various species worked at stations, monitoring systems and communications. At the center stood a tall figure gazing at a holographic display of star charts. When she turned, Ravi's breath caught. Valora's reputation spoke of a ruthless pirate queen, but nothing had prepared him for her presence. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a deep violet with subtle bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with her breathing. Her eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, were solid silver, reflecting light like polished mirrors. A crown of what appeared to be living crystal adorned her head, shifting and realigning as if responding to her thoughts. "Ravi Kapoor," she said, her voice the same one from the communication. "The human smuggler who once outran the Imperial flagship Dominion with a hold full of prohibited technology." She circled him slowly, assessing. "I expected someone more impressive." Ravi straightened, meeting her gaze despite the fear coursing through him. "Sorry to disappoint. If you're planning to kill me, I'd prefer you get it over with." Valora laughed, a sound like chimes in the wind. "Kill you? That would be wasteful." She gestured toward a screen displaying his cargo. "The artifacts you're carrying are valuable, yes, but your skills could be more valuable to me. The Imperials have placed quite a bounty on your head. So you're turning me in?" Ravi asked, calculating his chances of reaching the exit. 0, he concluded, noting the guards. I have a better proposition, Valora said, stepping closer. Up close, he could see the complex patterns beneath her skin, veins of light that shifted with her emotions. Join my crew. Your knowledge of Imperial patrol routes and smuggling channels would be useful. Ravi stared. You want me to work for you? With me, she corrected. Serve aboard the Crimson Talon for 1 standard solar cycle. If you prove yourself, you'll receive a share of our acquisitions and your freedom. And if I refuse? Her silver eyes flickered. Then I collect the bounty. The Imperials are particularly creative with those who've stolen from them. It wasn't really a choice. Death at Imperial hands was guaranteed to be slow and painful. At least with Valora, he might find a chance to escape. When you put it that way, Ravi said carefully, I'd be honored to join your illustrious crew. A smile curved her alien features. Wise decision. She turned to a lieutenant. Show him to quarters and assign him to navigation. Let's see if his skills match his reputation. As they led him away, Ravi glanced back. Valora was watching him with those unreadable silver eyes, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she saw right through his facade of compliance. 1 year aboard her ship. 1 year to find a way out. Little did he know that his greatest challenge wouldn't be escaping the Crimson Talon, but resisting its enigmatic captain. 3 weeks aboard the Crimson Talon had taught Ravi more about piracy than his previous decade of smuggling. Valoris' operation wasn't the chaotic plundering he'd expected, but a disciplined enterprise with clear hierarchies and protocols. Her crew, a diverse collection of species from across the galaxy, functioned with military precision. The navigation console before him displayed the ship's current course through a dense asteroid field. Ravi's fingers moved confidently across the controls, making minute adjustments. This role suited his skills perfectly, which made him suspect Valora had researched him thoroughly before their encounter. Approaching target coordinates, he announced to Kazan, the hulking Saurian first mate who always seemed to be watching him. Maintain position, Kazan ordered. The captain will be here shortly. Ravi nodded, keeping the massive vessel steady among the drifting rocks. He'd learned quickly that Valoris' crew respected competence above all else. His initial days had been filled with suspicious glares and muttered threats, but as he demonstrated his navigation skills, their attitudes had gradually shifted from hostility to grudging acceptance. The bridge doors slid open with a soft hiss, and the atmosphere immediately changed. Crew members straightened, their movements becoming more focused and precise. Valora had that effect, her presence commanded attention without her saying a word. Status report, she said, gliding to the command chair positioned at the center of the bridge. Target vessel will emerge from hyperspace in approximately 7 minutes, Kazan reported. All systems ready for interception. Valora nodded, her crystalline crown catching the light. Today, the living gemstones pulsed with a deep red energy that matched her form-fitting armor. Ravi had noticed the crown's colors seemed to reflect her moods, red for hunting, blue for strategic planning, amber during rare moments of relaxation. Mr. Kapoor, she said, turning those silver eyes toward him. I understand you've encountered this particular Imperial transport model before. Ravi kept his expression neutral. The Stellar-class transports have reinforced shields on their forward sections but relatively weak coverage on the underside. Their communication array is located aft, easily disabled with a precision strike. A smile curved her violet lips. Precisely why I assigned you to this mission. She rose and approached his station, studying the display over his shoulder. Her proximity sent an unexpected shiver down his spine, a mixture of intimidation and something else he wasn't ready to acknowledge. Here, he said, indicating a point on the holographic model. That's your blind spot. They won't detect an approach from that vector. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something passed between them, professional respect, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit who understood the delicate dance of survival in dangerous space. "Plot the intercept course," she ordered, but her tone was softer than usual. The operation went flawlessly. Using Ravi's insights, they disabled the Imperial transport's communications before it could send a distress signal. Valora led the boarding party herself, returning an hour later with crates of valuable medical supplies and advanced technology. No lives had been lost, another surprise that contradicted Valora's bloodthirsty reputation. Later that night, as the crew celebrated their successful raid, Ravi sat alone in the ship's observation deck, watching the stars streak by. The vast window offered a breathtaking view of space, making him feel simultaneously insignificant and free. "You don't join the celebrations," Valora's voice came from behind him. Ravi turned, surprised to find the captain without her usual entourage. "I'm still the outsider," he replied honestly. She approached, her movements fluid and graceful despite her imposing height. In the dim light, the bioluminescent patterns beneath her skin created constellations that rivaled the stars outside. "You contributed significantly to today's success," she said, taking a seat beside him. "The crew has noticed." Ravi shrugged. "I'm just trying to stay alive." "Is that all?" She tilted her head, studying him with those unreadable eyes. "You showed genuine excitement when you identified the transport's weakness. That wasn't self-preservation, that was the thrill of the challenge." He couldn't deny it. The operation had awakened something in him, a rush that exceeded anything he'd felt during his solo smuggling runs. "Perhaps," he admitted. Valora produced a flask of iridescent liquid and offered it to him. Kayastan nectar. Rare and potent. Ravi hesitated, then accepted, taking a cautious sip. The liquid burned pleasantly down his throat, leaving a taste like honey and starlight. "Why piracy?" he asked suddenly. "Someone with your strategic mind could command an imperial fleet." Something dark flickered across her features. "The Empire destroyed my homeworld, Ravi. My people are scattered across the galaxy, refugees without a home. I don't steal for wealth or power, I steal because everything was taken from me." She reclaimed the flask, her fingers brushing his. "And you? Why smuggling when you could be a legitimate transport captain?" The question caught him off guard. No one had asked about his motivations in years. "Freedom," he said finally. "No bureaucracy, no corporations dictating my course. Just open space and my own choices." She smiled, revealing teeth that gleamed like opals. "Then perhaps we're not so different." They sat in comfortable silence, passing the flask between them as the stars streamed by. Ravi found himself studying her profile, the elegant curve of her neck, the way her crown seemed to shimmer in response to her thoughts. Despite her alien features, or perhaps because of them, she was mesmerizing. "You're staring," she observed without looking at him. "Sorry," he said, embarrassed at being caught. "Your species. I've never encountered anyone like you before." "The Astrani are rare now," she said quietly. "There are perhaps 1,000 of us left." Impulsively, Ravi asked, "The patterns under your skin, do they mean something?" To his surprise, Valora extended her arm toward him. "See for yourself." Hesitantly, he traced a finger along the luminescent lines that swirled across her violet skin. They pulsed gently at his touch, brightening like stars. "They tell our life stories," she explained, her voice taking on a husky quality. "Each pattern forms during significant moments in an Astrani's life. This one," she guided his finger to a complex spiral near her wrist, "appeared when I took command of my first ship." The intimacy of the moment wasn't lost on Ravi. Her skin was surprisingly warm, with a texture like velvet over steel. "And this?" he asked, indicating a starburst pattern over her heart that seemed to pulse in time with her breathing. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. For a moment, Ravi thought she might tell him, but she gently withdrew her arm instead. Some stories aren't shared so easily, she said, rising to her feet. Get some rest, navigator. Tomorrow we venture into more dangerous territory. As she left, Ravi realized his heart was racing. The woman was his captor, a pirate who'd threatened his life. Yet he couldn't deny the growing fascination he felt toward her, not just her exotic beauty, but her intelligence, her strategic mind, the glimpses of vulnerability behind her commanding presence. He was supposed to be planning his escape, not developing feelings for the pirate queen. But as he watched her leave, Ravi acknowledged a troubling truth: for the first time since his capture, freedom wasn't his only desire. Imperial patrol vessels, 3 o'clock. Ravi shouted, his fingers flying across the navigation console. They're charging weapons. The bridge of the Crimson Talon erupted into controlled chaos as crew members rushed to battle stations. They'd been ambushed during a routine scavenging operation in what should have been abandoned space. Evasive maneuvers, Valora commanded, her voice calm despite the danger. Ravi, plot us a course through that debris field. He nodded, already calculating the safest path through the treacherous wreckage of ancient ships. 2 months aboard the Talon had honed his skills further, integrating his smuggler's instincts with Valora's more aggressive tactics. The ship banked sharply as energy blasts from the Imperial cruisers streaked past. Ravi guided them deeper into the debris, using the larger fragments as shields. They're deploying fighters, reported Kazan from the tactical station. Valora's crown flashed crimson as she assessed the situation. They were waiting for us. This is a trap. Her silver eyes narrowed. Who knew our coordinates? The accusation hung in the air. As the newest crew member, suspicion naturally fell on Ravi. He felt the weight of distrustful stares but kept his focus on navigation. 2 Imperial destroyers blocking our exit vector, he announced. But there's a radiation cloud at heading 227 that could mask our signature. Valora studied the display, then nodded. Do it. The Crimson Talon dove into the radioactive particles, its shields glowing as they absorbed the harmful energy. The pursuing vessels hesitated, unwilling to risk damage to their systems. It worked, Ravi breathed, relief washing over him. Temporarily, Valora corrected. We need a more permanent solution. She turned to her first mate. Kazan, prepare the boarding party. We're taking one of those fighters. The plan was audacious: capture an Imperial fighter, download its mission parameters, and use that intelligence to escape the ambush. Ravi hadn't expected to be included in the boarding party, but Valora personally selected him. Your knowledge of Imperial protocols may prove useful, she explained as they prepared in the launch bay. Her battle armor accentuated her powerful physique, and the energy blade at her hip hummed with lethal potential. Ravi checked his own equipment, a standard-issue blaster and protective gear that felt inadequate compared to the specialized arsenal of the other pirates. I'm not much of a fighter, he admitted. Valora's three-eyed gaze assessed him. Sometimes the most valuable weapon is here, she tapped his temple, not here. She touched his blaster. The brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through him. The boarding went smoothly at first. They captured the Imperial fighter with minimal resistance, and Ravi set to work accessing the ship's computers while Valora and her team secured the small crew. They were specifically hunting you, Ravi said as information scrolled across the screen. This is a dedicated pirate hunter squadron. Your recent raids have attracted serious attention. Valora frowned. How did they know our location? Before Ravi could answer, the ship rocked violently. Warning lights flashed as emergency systems activated. Self-destruct sequence, he shouted. They've triggered a failsafe. Evacuate. Valora ordered, pulling him away from the console. Back to the Talon. They rushed toward their docking point, but another explosion separated Ravi and Valora from the rest of the boarding party. Flames blocked their primary escape route, and atmosphere was venting from multiple breaches in the hull. "This way," Valora said, dragging him down a side corridor toward the fighters' escape pods. They had nearly reached the pods when the final explosion hit. The force threw them forward, and a section of overhead plating crashed down. Ravi rolled clear, but a horrifying sound made him turn back. Valora was pinned beneath the metal, purple blood seeping onto the deck. Without hesitation, he rushed to her side. The metal was too heavy to lift completely, but he managed to create enough space for her to pull free. Her left leg was badly injured, the luminescent patterns flickering weakly across the damaged tissue. "Leave me," she commanded, her voice strained with pain. "Save yourself." Ravi almost laughed. "And face your crew after abandoning their captain? I'd rather take my chances with the collapsing ship." He helped her to the nearest escape pod, supporting her weight as she limped forward. The small craft was designed for human proportions, forcing them into intimate proximity as the door sealed behind them. "Launching," Ravi said, activating the emergency systems. The pod ejected with a violent jolt, spinning away from the dying fighter. In the cramped space, Valora's breathing was labored. Ravi examined her wound, finding a deep gash that exposed the complex musculature of her alien physiology. "I need to stop the bleeding," he said, tearing strips from his undershirt to create a makeshift bandage. She watched him work, her silver eyes unreadable. "Why help me? This was your perfect opportunity to escape." Ravi's hands paused on her injured leg. The question had a simple answer, but he wasn't ready to voice it. Instead, he said, "I'm a survivor. Right now, our survival is linked." A small smile curved her lips. "A practical answer. The only kind that matters in space," he replied, securing the bandage. Their faces were inches apart in the confined pod. Ravi became acutely aware of her alien beauty, the subtle glow beneath her skin, the crown that now pulsed with a deep amber hue, the silver eyes that seemed to see through his carefully maintained defenses. "Is it?" she asked softly. "Is practicality all that matters to you, Ravi Kapoor?" His name on her lips sent a shiver through him. Before he could form a response, she leaned forward and brushed her mouth against his. The sensation was electric, her lips warmer than a human's, with a faint taste like cinnamon and stardust. For a moment, he froze in surprise, then responded with unexpected eagerness, his hand coming up to caress the smooth curve of her jaw. The kiss deepened, necessity giving way to hunger. Her alien physiology made the experience both familiar and thrillingly new, the texture of her skin, the soft purr that vibrated from her chest, the way the luminescent patterns beneath her skin brightened at his touch. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Valora's eyes had darkened to a stormy gray, and the patterns across her skin pulsed with rapid intensity. "That was..." Ravi struggled to find words. "Unexpected," she finished, a smile playing at her lips. A beeping from the console interrupted the moment. The Crimson Talon had located their pod and was moving to retrieve them. "Your crew has excellent timing," Ravi said wryly. Valora laughed, the sound like musical chimes. "They're efficient." Her expression grew serious as she touched his face. "But this conversation isn't finished, Navigator." The way she said his title made it sound like an endearment. Ravi caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. "I'm counting on that, Captain." As the Talon's tractor beam locked onto their pod, Ravi knew his plans had irrevocably changed. Escape was no longer his priority. Whatever was developing between him and this enigmatic alien woman, attraction, connection, perhaps something deeper, he needed to see where it led. The universe had just become infinitely more complicated, and infinitely more interesting. The door to Valora's private quarters slid open as Ravi approached, recognizing his biometric signature. 3 months had passed since the kiss in the escape pod, transforming his role aboard the Crimson Talon from reluctant navigator to the captain's trusted confidant and lover. He found her at her desk, studying star charts with intense concentration. The living crystals of her crown shimmered with deep blue energy, indicating her strategic focus. She didn't look up as he entered, but the patterns beneath her violet skin brightened in acknowledgement of his presence. "The crew is concerned," he said, moving behind her to massage her shoulders. The powerful muscles beneath his fingers were tense. "You've been locked away for hours." Valora leaned into his touch with a soft purr. "The Imperial blockade around the Nix sector has doubled. Our usual supply routes are compromised." Ravi studied the charts over her shoulder. Their relationship had evolved into a true partnership, his smuggler's cunning complementing her tactical brilliance. The crew had initially been suspicious of their captain's relationship with the human, but results spoke louder than prejudice. Their recent operations had been unprecedented successes. "What about the Razig corridor?" he suggested. "It's unstable, but navigable if you know the gravitational eddies." She turned to face him, a smile warming her alien features. "Already plotting a course through it?" Her hand came up to caress his face, the bioluminescent patterns on her palm pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "It's what you keep me around for," he teased, capturing her hand to place a kiss on her wrist. "Among other qualities," she murmured, pulling him closer for a proper kiss. The sensation still thrilled him, the exotic taste of her, the heat of her skin against his, the soft vibration in her chest that intensified with her desire. What had begun as an unexpected attraction had deepened into something neither of them had anticipated. When they parted, her silver eyes had darkened to the stormy gray that he now recognized as arousal. "Perhaps the planning can wait," she suggested, rising from her chair with feline grace. Later, as they lay entwined in her bed, Ravi traced the luminescent patterns across her bare shoulder. They glowed with satisfied contentment, creating constellations across her violet skin. Her third eye had closed in relaxation, something he'd learned happened only when she felt completely safe. "Tell me about this one," he said, touching a complex pattern over her heart, the same one she'd refused to explain months ago in the observation deck. Valora tensed slightly. "It's connected to an Astrani's life force," she said softly. "Our most vulnerable point, both physically and emotionally." Ravi's finger stilled. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "No," she interrupted, taking his hand and placing it deliberately over the pattern. "I want you to know." Beneath his palm, he could feel the strong, steady beat of her alien heart, faster than a human's, with a subtle double rhythm. "In my species, sharing knowledge of one's heartmark is the ultimate trust." The significance wasn't lost on him. Months ago, he'd been her prisoner. Now she was sharing her most closely guarded vulnerability. "I love you," he said, the words emerging unbidden but utterly sincere. Her three eyes widened, then softened. "And I you, Ravi Kapoor. More than I thought possible." They made love again, more slowly this time, exploring the familiar geography of each other's bodies with renewed wonder. Afterward, Valora fell into a deep sleep, her crown dimming to a soft amber glow. Ravi watched her for a long moment, then carefully slid from the bed. There was something he needed to confirm. In the adjacent bathroom, he opened the hidden compartment he discovered weeks ago while Valora was on a solo mission. Inside lay a small device unlike anything he'd seen before, organic technology that pulsed with the same bioluminescence as Valora's skin markings. His smuggler's instincts had immediately recognized it as valuable, but he'd resisted the urge to steal it, waiting to understand its purpose. Now, after what Valora had shared, he had a suspicion. Returning to the bedroom, he studied the sleeping pirate queen. The heartmark on her chest pulsed with the same rhythm as the device. They were connected somehow. A quick search through her medical records on her private terminal confirmed his theory. Valora suffered from a rare condition affecting her species, her heart's natural regulatory system was failing. The device was keeping her alive, synchronizing with her heartmark to maintain its rhythm. It was her weakness. The kind of weakness that would fetch an astronomical price from her enemies. The kind that could buy Ravi his freedom and enough wealth to live luxuriously for decades. The realization hit him with physical force. After all this time, he'd found his way out. All he needed to do was take the device, arrange a meeting with the Imperial commander hunting Valora, and make the exchange. He stared at the sleeping alien woman, the proud, fierce captain who'd captured him, the complex, passionate lover who'd shared her most guarded secret. The patterns beneath her skin shifted with her dreams, creating hypnotic swirls of light in the darkened room. With trembling hands, Ravi closed the terminal and returned to bed. Valora instinctively curled against him, her body fitting perfectly against his despite their different physiologies. Her heartmark pulsed steadily beneath his hand. Sleep eluded him as he grappled with his discovery. He'd spent months looking for a way to escape, and now that he'd found it, the prospect filled him with self-loathing. But what was the alternative? Spending his life as a pirate, forever hunted by the Empire? Could what they had together withstand the reality of their circumstances? Morning found him still awake, no closer to a decision. "You're troubled," Valora observed as she dressed for the day, her perceptive eyes missing nothing. Ravi managed a smile. "Just thinking about the Razig corridor. It's more dangerous than I initially suggested." She approached, fully armored now, every inch the formidable pirate queen. "You've never shied from danger before." Her hand tilted his chin up. "Whatever's bothering you, Ravi, remember that I trust you completely." The irony of her words twisted in his gut like a knife. "As should you trust me." With a final kiss, she left for the bridge, leaving Ravi alone with his tormented thoughts. Hours later, he made his decision. He recorded a message to an Imperial frequency, arranging a meeting with Commander Drayson, the officer leading the hunt for Valora. The transmission was brief, encoded, and sent from an untraceable channel, skills he'd perfected during his smuggling years. As the confirmation came through, setting the meeting for the following day, Ravi felt hollow. He'd found his escape, but at what cost? The device from Valora's quarters felt heavy in his pocket as he walked the corridors of the ship that had become his home. Tomorrow, he would betray the woman he loved. Tomorrow, he would be free. But as night fell and he returned to Valora's quarters, finding her waiting with a rare bottle of Centaurian wine to celebrate their upcoming run through the Razig corridor, Ravi wasn't certain which prospect terrified him more, betraying her, or realizing that his freedom might no longer be what he truly wanted. The neutral trading station hung in space like a tarnished coin, rotating slowly against the backdrop of a crimson nebula. Ravi piloted the small shuttle toward Docking Bay 7, where Commander Drayson waited. The Imperial officer had agreed to meet alone, a calculated risk on both their parts. In Ravi's pocket, the organic device pulsed with Valora's life rhythm. He'd removed it during the night while she slept, replacing it with a duplicate he'd fabricated that would function for approximately 12 hours before failing. By then, he would be gone, wealthy, free, and responsible for the death of the woman he loved. The thought made him physically ill. He docked the shuttle with mechanical precision, his mind replaying moments from the past 5 months, Valora teaching him a strainy battle meditation, their first night together after the firefight with rival pirates, the way her 3 eyes crinkled when she laughed at his terrible attempts to speak her native language. Commander Drayson was waiting in the empty cargo bay, a tall, stern-faced human with imperial precision in every movement. 2 heavily armed guards flanked him, despite the agreement to meet alone. "So you're the infamous Captain Valora's human pet," Drayson said by way of greeting. "I expected someone more impressive." Ravi ignored the insult. "You brought extra company." Drayson shrugged. "Insurance. Do you have the device?" Ravi's hand closed around the organic technology in his pocket. One simple exchange and he'd have his freedom, along with enough credits to disappear permanently. First, I want to see the transfer confirmation, he said, falling back on his smuggler's instincts. Never complete a deal without proof of payment. The commander produced a datapad displaying an astronomical sum ready for transfer to an untraceable account. Satisfied? Slowly, Ravi withdrew the device from his pocket. It pulsed with gentle blue light, a physical manifestation of Valora's heartbeat. In the sterile cargo bay, it looked even more alien, a piece of living technology that sustained the extraordinary woman who had captured him in more ways than one. Drayson's eyes gleamed with cold triumph. With this, the pirate queen's reign ends. The Empire will restore order to the sectors she's terrorized. Order, Ravi repeated numbly. Is that what you call destroying her homeworld? Turning her people into refugees? The Imperial officer's expression hardened. Collateral damage in service to a greater purpose. Now hand it over. Ravi looked down at the device, feeling its warm pulse against his palm. Each beat represented Valora's life, her passion, her strategic brilliance, her capacity for both ruthless command and unexpected tenderness. A memory surfaced, Valora standing in the observation deck after a successful raid, distributing medical supplies to refugee ships from worlds the Empire had stripped bare. We take from those who hoard power, she'd told him, and give to those who need hope. She wasn't just a pirate. She was a revolutionary. I've changed my mind, Ravi said quietly. Drayson's face contorted with rage. You fool. There's no backing out now. He nodded to his guards, who raised their weapons. Give me the device, or die here. A familiar voice came from behind them. He won't be the one dying today, Commander. All heads turned to see Valora standing in the doorway, energy blade humming at her side. Her crown blazed with battle-red crystals, and the patterns beneath her skin pulsed with furious intensity. Behind her stood Kazan and a dozen heavily armed crew members. How? Ravi gasped. The replacement device should have given him more time. Valora's silver eyes flicked to him briefly. Did you think I wouldn't notice a counterfeit heart regulator? I knew the moment you switched them. She advanced into the room with predatory grace. What I didn't know was why. Drayson's guards opened fire. Valora moved with inhuman speed, her blade deflecting energy bolts as her crew returned fire. Within moments, the guards lay dead, and Drayson himself was disarmed and on his knees. Valora, Ravi began, but she cut him off with a raised hand. Why, Ravi? The pain in her voice was worse than anger would have been. Was freedom worth my life? He looked at the device still clutched in his hand, then at the woman he'd betrayed. I arranged this meeting to find out. Confusion flickered across her alien features. I discovered your condition weeks ago, he explained. I knew what this device meant to you, that it was your vulnerability. The perfect leverage for my escape. He swallowed hard. But when the moment came to make the exchange, I couldn't do it. A convenient claim now that I've arrived with superior force, she said coldly. Ravi shook his head and held out the device to her. Check your replacement. It's fully functional, not designed to fail. I created it to protect you in case I... He couldn't finish the sentence. Valora hesitated, then gestured to Kazan, who examined both devices with a specialized scanner. He speaks truth, Captain, the Saurian confirmed. The replacement is functional. Crude, but effective. The tension in Valora's posture eased slightly. Then why this charade? Why meet with an Imperial commander at all? Ravi looked at the kneeling Drayson, then back to Valora. Because I needed to choose. Not under your influence, not swept up in what we share, but on my own terms. He approached her slowly. I chose you. I will always choose you. The intensity in her silver eyes was overwhelming, suspicion battling with hope, anger with love. A touching declaration, Drayson sneered from the floor. But the Empire will hunt you both to the edges of the galaxy now. Valoris' attention shifted to the Imperial officer. You've been hunting me for years, Commander. The difference now is that I'm no longer fighting alone. Her hand reached for Ravi's, intertwining their fingers. What shall we do with him? Ravi considered the man who had nearly been his ticket to freedom. Send him back to his superiors, he suggested. With a message, the Crimson Talon and her captain are now under the protection of the Renegade Alliance. Valoris' eyes widened at the mention of the growing coalition of worlds resisting Imperial control. You made contact with the Alliance? Before I arranged this meeting, Ravi confirmed. They're eager to have someone with your strategic mind and resources join their cause. A purpose beyond piracy. For a moment, she was silent, processing the implications. Then a slow smile spread across her face, the luminescent patterns beneath her skin brightening with excitement. First mate, she called to Kazan, escort our Imperial guest to his ship. Ensure he delivers our message. As the crew dragged Drayson away, Valora turned to Ravi. The anger in her eyes had given way to something softer, more vulnerable. You betrayed me, she said, and then chose me anyway. Ravi nodded. I had to know if what I felt for you was real or just circumstances. If freedom was still what I wanted most. His hand came up to touch the heart mark on her chest, visible through a gap in her armor. It's not. You are. The living crystals of her crown shifted from battle red to a deep, pulsing purple he'd never seen before. The color of devotion, he would later learn. The path I walk is dangerous, she warned. The Empire will never stop hunting us. Ravi smiled. I'm a smuggler who fell in love with a pirate queen. I never expected an easy life. His arms encircled her waist. But it will be an extraordinary one. Their kiss sealed a new pact, no longer captor and captive, but equals in an alliance built on choice rather than circumstance. The crew looked on, some with approval, others with lingering suspicion, but all recognizing the significance of the moment. As they returned to the Crimson Talon, Valora kept Ravi's hand firmly in hers. On the bridge, she addressed the assembled crew. Today marks a new chapter for us, she announced. No longer simply pirates taking what we can, but warriors in a greater struggle against imperial tyranny. Her silver eyes gleamed with purpose. Those who wish to follow this path may stay. Those who don't are free to leave at our next port with their fair share of our holdings. Not a single crew member stepped forward to leave. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, their quarters now, Valora placed both heart regulators side by side. The original pulsed with sophisticated bioluminescence, while Ravi's creation glowed with a steadier, simpler light. Your design is remarkable for someone with no knowledge of Astrani physiology, she said, examining it closely. Ravi shrugged. I'm adaptable. She laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Indeed you are. Her expression grew serious. But this deception, even with your ultimate choice, has created a wound between us. I know, he acknowledged. Trust once broken is not easily restored. Valora took his hand and placed it over her heart mark. Then we begin again, with total honesty. No more secrets, no more contingency plans for escape. No more, he agreed, pulling her close. My heart for your heart. As their lips met, the luminescent patterns across Valora's skin brightened to an intense glow that filled the room with starlight. And on Ravi's chest, directly above his human heart, a faint blue pattern began to form, the first sign of an extraordinary transformation born of love between two different worlds. The Crimson Talon surged forward into hyperspace, carrying its crew toward a new destiny, one forged in the unlikely bond between a human smuggler and the alien queen who had captured his heart as surely as she had once captured his ship. Their journey was just beginning. The end.